It is Wednesday, February the 27th, 2013, and I want to welcome you to this week's Six Mix. And on this week's edition of the Six Mix, I'm going to be listing 6 black sports personalities in honor of Black History Month. Irvin Magic Johnson, back to back, yeah! And when we talk about Magic Johnson, we're talking about the guy who was the leader of Showtime. And when he was running with the Lakers back in the 1980s, it brought basketball to a whole new level. Me, being born in 1979 and having the chance to watch Magic Johnson throughout his entire career was to me an honor. And it was because of him that I came to love the game of basketball. What you got with Magic Johnson was not just a guy who could score, because if he really wanted to, he could have possibly have led the NBA in scoring throughout his career. But here was a guy who believed in getting his teammates involved, and he made passing the ball just as cool as it was to score the ball. And Magic Johnson made me love basketball, and I still have that love for basketball even to this day because of watching him play. And that is why Magic Johnson, when it comes to the black athletes that have impacted my life, I have to put him at number 1. Did you ever get a chance to see Jackie Robinson hit that ball? Well, unfortunately, I didn't. I wasn't even born yet, but I've had a chance to look at all of the historical clips anytime they show documentaries or anytime they show footage on Jackie Robinson. And he is known as the first black player to be able to cross the barrier from the Negro Leagues into the Major Leagues. And what a great player he was. Second baseman for the Brooklyn Dodgers back then, who eventually became the Los Angeles Dodgers and helped the Dodgers win the World Series in 1955. One of the reasons why I think Jackie Robinson is huge is not only because he was able to make that transition into the Major Leagues and absolutely be a phenomenal player, but being the first black player in the Major Leagues also presented its challenges. And there were many occasions in which he was subjected to racism, in which he was subjected to discrimination. But no matter what, Jackie Robinson continued to hold his head high, and that's why he remains an inspiration today for any black athlete that is going into professional sports. And when you think of the word champion, you got to think of Bill Russell, even more so than Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan won 6 championship rings, Magic Johnson won 5, but Bill Russell won an unprecedented 11 championships during his NBA career with the Boston Celtics. Won his first one in 1957. Then a string of 8 championships from 1959 to 1966, and then went on to win 2 more in 1968 and 1969. One of the things that is not really known about Bill Russell is that in 1969, when he won the NBA championship with the Boston Celtics, he didn't just win it as a player, but he also won it as the head coach of the team. A feat that has never been duplicated even to this point here in 2013. And then when you talk about Bill Russell, you're talking about a guy who was very involved in the black community. And he was very, very active in the civil rights movement. And so when you look at Bill Russell, you're looking at a guy who not only had an impact on the court, but also off the court. Former San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Jerry Rice. And if you want to talk about somebody who had an impact on my life and made me start loving the game of football, Joe Montana was one, but Jerry Rice was definitely the other. And that connection between Montana and Rice was absolutely beautiful on the field. And if you know about Jerry Rice and his background, as a child he actually used to work with bricks and actually used to catch bricks, thereby formulating what he would be known as one of the most sure-handed receivers in the history of the NFL. Jerry Rice's work ethic was just absolutely awesome. And if you're ever looking for a guy that you want to copy, that you want to mimic in terms of work ethic, Jerry Rice was that man. And Jerry Rice went on to win 3 Super Bowls with the San Francisco 49ers. He went on to eventually play with the Oakland Raiders and then the Seattle Seahawks. but Jerry Rice, by many, is known to be one of the greatest receivers of all time, if not the greatest receiver of all time. Some people even call him the greatest NFL player of all time. And when you look at Jerry Rice and what he has done in this list of accomplishments, it's hard to argue with that. Do any of you remember the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin, Germany? And this was the Olympic Games in which a guy by the name of Jesse Owens came onto the scene and won 4 gold medals in the 100 meters, 200 meters, 4x100 meter relay, and the long jump. And this was during a time in which Germany was Nazi Germany, and a time in which America was going through the Great Depression. And yet this was an inspirational performance that he did at that Olympic Games. So inspirational and so awesome was Jesse Owens that he was eventually honored by Adolf Hitler for his efforts at the Olympic Games. What was interesting and what was shocking as part of that Olympic Games was that even though Adolf Hitler honored Jesse Owens for his achievements, current U.S. President at the time, Franklin D. Roosevelt, didn't as much as even send Jesse Owens a telegram congratulating him on his efforts. What was even sadder was that when Jesse Owens returned home to the United States, he was subject to racism and discrimination and was basically lowered to having to raise animals in order to make ends meet. But it still doesn't take away the fact that when you look at the 1936 Olympic Games, you see Jesse Owens, and he is the personification of that Olympic Games. The reason why James Brown gets on this list for me is because he is a guy who carries himself with class, he carries himself with dignity, and you can never ever think of a time in which James Brown presented himself in a way that was undignified, that was unclassy, and James Brown does his job and does it well. And for anybody, any black person, or anybody that is going into sportscasting or wants to be a sports broadcaster, James Brown, looking at his body of work and looking at how he carries himself, he certainly is a great example to follow. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Six Mix. I want to remind you that we have Fast Break Friday coming up this Friday. Check it out on sportsinbounds.com. Also, don't forget that we're going to be talking about the competitive nature this coming Monday on the newest edition of the sportsinbounds.com show on Blog Talk Radio. Be sure to check out sportsinbounds.com when you have time. See the different editions and see the different things that we're doing on there. And with that, I'm Lando Rigs, and I am out.